Welcome, everyone, to episode 30 of Caster Calls with ZombieGrub. That's right, the big 3-0. It's been quite a lot of podcasts, talked to a lot of different people from all over the esports world. And today I have Wavepunk, who is certainly most well known for participating in the Rockey League scene, as well as being a Twitch Rivals host for a lot of their events that they've done, a lot of esports with that tournament format content. I don't know what we would call it, Twitch Rivals, but one of those things. So thank you for coming on, dude. What we do here on this podcast is just kind of let you talk about how you got into esports and talk about more of the specifics. So this is where you can just start talking.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Nice, thank you. I think everyone likes talking about esports and their journey, and most of the time people have told a little bit of their story, but I found that it's a bit more rare to have a long form podcast where they can really get into like it all began when I was a baby, and then and then it goes on from there, right?
Yeah.
But you're totally allowed to do that here. So when did you first get into esports?
It's funny because like people ask you on stream all the time, right? They'll always be like, "Oh, how do you get into esports?" And it's like, okay, I'm telling the story for the 10th time this week, and you you always tell in different ways, but never like you never just like, okay, chat, let's just sit and really talk about it. I discovered esports. I had a friend in like middle school who was a professional Halo 2 player, as in that he had won money playing Halo 2. And that was the craziest thing I could possibly think of. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Texas, and parents were lovely people, are lovely people, but were not very game friendly. And it was the video games were things I got to do for half an hour a day if I had done all my chores and they were in a good mood. That was you had to pass all of those checks. So video games were something that I like. I was a pretty good kid, but I would break the rules to play games. I would find ways to go to my friends' houses and play games and stuff. And I really always wanted to know more. And I remember discovering MLG via like a Halo Reach tournament online. Like it was one of the first esports event I ever watched was like MLG Columbus finals for Halo Reach, and be like, this is the coolest thing. Halo was my first love in video games, and it was the thing I cared about the most. And I remember seeing it and being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I just want to be a part of this in any way, shape, or form. And I had absolutely no idea where to go next. We had dial-up internet. I didn't have Xbox Live. I had no way to compete online, no way to get involved with gaming communities. And the first esports event was actually junior year of college. At this point, I now had like an Xbox and had my own Xbox Live subscription and was competing in online games, but I still didn't know how to get involved with esports. Really, I had like a team. We had like a team that would compete in the game battles SWAT ladder in Halo, but that was like as close as I was getting to competing in esports or being involved in esports was game battles. And we went to this event. It was MLG Dallas. I lived in Fort Worth, and the Halo was out at this point. MLG was running Call of Duty, Black Ops, and StarCraft and League of Legends. Those were the three games that were at that event. And it was in the Dallas Convention Center. And it was on my sister's birthday. So I bought 2 tickets and said, hey, do you want to, for your birthday, go to this esports event? She did not care. She enjoys video games, but is not a gamer. And she was like, oh, this sounds cool. And I was able to sell it to my parents as bonding time with my sister. And they were like, oh, that's great. So we went, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever been a part of, that I'd ever been to. It was so awesome. And I remember at one point walking. I was there for Call of Duty. I wanted to watch the shooting games. That was what I cared about the most. I had never played League of Legends. Actually, never played StarCraft either. I understood what StarCraft was. I played Age of Empires. I understood RTSs. I remember at one point sitting down and watching League of Legends, and as someone who considered himself a gamer, had no idea what was happening. That was the first time experiencing a MOBA and being like, I don't even understand what the win objective is here. But it was cool. It was PlanetSide 2 had a booth at that event as well, and that was where my love affair with PlanetSide 2 popped up, and it was a really fun experience. That's a whole story in and of itself. But there was at one point the Call of Duty was kind of on break. They were I don't know why they were done for the day or something, and I was just walking around the convention hall, and I walked behind the Call of Duty booth, and that was where they had 3 tables set up with casting stations. And there's just 3 desks with spotlights and dudes in suits commentating the StarCraft and the League of Legends. And I remember seeing those guys and being like, that's one of the coolest jobs I can possibly think of. I want to, how do you get to do that? I also remember having the thought, like, this is the one job I'd be willing to wear a suit every day for, because I don't like dressing up. I do not like wearing suits. But I saw that and I was like, this is maybe the exception. I'd be willing to wear a suit to do that. That seems so cool to like know a lot about a game and to be able to like tell the story, be part of that show. Oh, that'd just be so interesting, so fascinating. What a job. And then having the next thought of, I have no idea how to do that. And kind of filing that away for a bit and just percolating on it a little bit. Fast forward a few years, I have a roommate now. I've moved out of my house, my parents' place. I'm in my own place. I went to college for music composition and music theory, and did a lot of performing through that, and was very involved with the stage crew. I was a stagehand all through college, and then as soon as I graduated, I wanted to get into writing soundtracks for video games. The college I went to, Texas Christian University, is a wonderful, wonderful place, but don't really have any connections to the gaming industry, and it was not the sort of thing that I could. I didn't have it wasn't like I graduated college and they were like, all right, here's kind of like the connections with studios and stuff, and here's how we're gonna help you build a resume that'll help you get a job like that. It was just something I had to try and do by myself. So I was trying to get involved with like small game studios and stuff, but I found a summer job and was working that in the meantime. And while I was doing that, one of the full-time stage managers at the university left, and they had an opening. And so I applied for that, having been a stage hand for 4 years, and got that full-time job. So I now was working on stages, producing, helping make shows. And as a stage manager in this particular role, you were a stage manager, but you were also a lighting director and a fly rail operator and a sound engineer and a video broadcast engineer, because the university would broadcast all of their concerts on YouTube, live streamed, so that families abroad could watch their students perform their recitals. And you put out probably 3 shows a day. We would probably make like 200 shows a year or something. And because most of them are all senior recitals, it's just you put a piano out there, point a camera at it, and cut between 3 robocams, like pretty. But so like that was I had a background in production and in being in front of a stage and having to talk to people. And so that was what I was doing as my day job. I moved in with this roommate who was really into esports. We would play Smash Brothers. I went to he was super into Dota though. Dota was really his game. And at this point, I'd watched and played about 2 years of League of Legends, strictly because my friends played it. I was not into MOBAs. It was not my game style, but it was what everyone was doing. And the 2 main reasons I get into gaming are as a social dynamic and as a competitive dynamic. And League of Legends satisfied both of those things, even though the actual game mechanics weren't my favorite. So I knew MOBAs at this point. I'd never really played Dota, and this roommate was really into Dota. So I was like, I'm excited to watch Dota and see if I can enjoy it as an esport without competing in it. Because that's always the thing, is like, oh, you have to play the game to enjoy watching it. And I wanted, like, as a social experiment, see if I could enjoy Dota without playing it. The answer was yes, especially when you went to the International, and that was the craziest esports event. That's still the craziest esports event I've ever been to. Like, what an event. If you have the opportunity to go to the International as an esports fan, even if you don't care about Dota, go. It's such a good show, well-produced event. But at this point, I was a part of some gaming groups. I was looking for a new game to compete in, as I was starting to come to terms with the fact that I didn't actually like League of Legends. And I was like, I want to play something I enjoy. And Rocket League had come out. I'd seen it on Reddit. I'd seen people posting GIFs of their goals. And I remember seeing it and being like, that game looks like a game I would enjoy playing for like 2 weeks and then never play again. So I'm not going to buy it, but we'll just let it sit there. And I had a group of 3 friends, so 4 of us in total, who would play games almost every night. And we would play co-op games. We would play Castle Crashers and stuff like that. We were never playing competitive games though. And I was like, I want to play competitive games. Hey, is there a game that we can play with like 4 people on a team against other teams of 4 that you guys would be interested in playing in? And one of them had just bought Rocket League and said, hey, I'm playing this game, Rocket League. You should come play this with me. And I looked into it. I was like, oh, you can play like 2v2, or you can play 3v3 or 4v4. Oh, this is great. This is perfect for our friend group, just in case, one of us can't make it or 2 of us can't make it. The other of us can keep playing. And so we all bought the game and we played it and had a hilarious time, all being bad at Rocket League. and there was at one point there was a little tournament and the threes, and so the three of us that were actually kind of into it joined that and didn't win a single game. And then another person kind of fell off, and it was just me and one other individual from this group really kind of took after this game, and we became a doubles team and played in a few different doubles like community leagues. Still barely ever won, but had a good time doing it. And at this point, I kind of had the thought of who's casting this game? Like I've never. What does this game look like at the professional level? And I went to YouTube and typed in like Rocket League professionals and found a video from Gibbs, who is the if you've watched RLCS, he's the primary desk anchor, and he's been there every single season. I saw that, and in the first 30 seconds of that gameplay, I saw more mind-blowing things than I had in the entirety of my Rocket League like experience up until that point. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I started watching the Rocket League Pro tournaments, and that was the first moment I had the thought of, wow, I was listening to the commentators and I was like, I think I can do this better than they can. Like my performance experience as a musician and being on a stage and my understanding of how to tell a story, I think I like, without having done this, I think that I can do this. I can do what these people are doing. And one of the I rewind. I'd seen that event with the MLG Dallas where the people were casting. I was like, that's cool, but I don't know how to do that. I had always kind of looked into it just casually online of like, how do you do this? How do people get into this? And one of the things I had found probably 6 months to a year before that moment of, oh, I could do this casting better than the Rocket League people, was a video from Purge, the Dota commentator, just talking about how he got into esports. How do you become an esports caster? And his tip, his primary piece of feedback, and this is the piece of feedback I have given to anybody that has asked me this question after that, is just do it. Just, if you want to commentate, find any way to commentate something. If you want to commentate Dota, like record your own gameplay and then cast your own gameplay, or get your friends to record their games and cast their gameplay, put it on YouTube. Find just genuinely, don't wait for someone to give you an opportunity, just start doing it. And so I was like, that would be something I would enjoy. I could do this with Rocket League. Like, let's just try this. Let's try this model and see what happens. So I started a YouTube channel around Rocket League. My YouTube channel was originally around TCU college football. That was a lot of fun, but I'm not enough into football to really sustain a channel about that. And so I moved to doing Rocket League content, and I started with like educational videos and like, here's some videos of like, here's how I do this play. Let me just do a play breakdown with a big old whiteboard I had up in my house, and then go like into the game and show you that play in real time. But throughout that was the Wavepunk cast, the Wavepunk Shoutcast series, where I literally, the first video is me uploading my own gameplay, taking a replay, casting over it, and then posting it on all the subreddits, which was mainly just one at the time, and saying, hey, if you want your gameplay casted, send me the replay, I'll cast it. And so began a series of me casting bronze and silver level gameplay that had absolutely no strategical depth to it to actually analyze, but was really good for getting my feet wet and understanding like how commentary works. And I was doing my own graphics for it, and like kind of like I would bring in like the game HUD, and like if it like went like when there was the goal, I'd flash like a replay of it or something like that. And it was a fun project. And I did about 10 episodes of that, which was like kind of like one a week, from like January through February-ish or so probably more than one a week. And I at one point was in a few Rocket League discords, and one person had seen it. His name was Minecraft Dad. He's still around the Rocket League community every once in a while, and he said, hey, we're running this 2v2 tournament over here, and we can actually use a caster. You're not that bad. Would you like to commentate? And I said, yes, absolutely, 100%. What do I need to do? And they're like, well, we don't have a broadcast, so like, it's just a community event. So if you can figure out how to broadcast it, we'll figure out how to get you in the lobbies, and you can cast it. I was like, sick, this is great. And so I stayed up all night with this roommate who loved Dota. He was a big computer nerd. We had two big desks set up next to each other. We figured out how between our two computers to stream, because I had never actually done it before. So my first stream ever was a dual PC setup, and I stayed up all night making graphics for it and setting up scenes in OBS, and then it was like a 6-hour broadcast, just me, like I'm literally the whole thing. And at one point, my roommate, like I was just casting, and he just walked up and sat down like food he had gone and bought from Sonic in front of me. I had not asked him for food, but it was a wonderful person, great guy, just looking out for me. And made it through that broadcast. It was long. The entire VOD is on my YouTube channel. If you want to go check it out at some point, it's garbage, but it's history at this point. And so then I had my first like actual broadcast under my belt, and that made me feel really proud. And I was like, this is cool, and people are actually liking me. And so I did that, and there was a few other smallish events like that. But there wasn't really many other opportunities of people being like, hey, can you please come cast our league? Until I reached out to Cloud Fuel. So Rocket League Central is the primary Rocket League community hub at the time. It operates entirely through Skype. Discord doesn't exist. Everything is just there's this one group chat of people discussing how they're going to run tournaments. And Rocket League Central had run some pro leagues and some pro tournaments, and they were the primary organizer that ran Gfinity's weekly European brackets that had like $150 prize pool or something. And that was the Rocket League like primary competitive weekly event, was these Gfinity events. And we would run those. We would run them on the Rocket League Central channel, and then there would be power rankings afterwards. And that was basically the Rocket League scene for the first like 6 months to a year of Rocket League being in existence. And I was watching those events. And was like, this is cool. I've never been a part of these. But I'm in that Rocket League Central Skype channel. I talk to some people sometimes, and I messaged Cloud Fuel on Discord though. So Discord had just come into existence when I made this. And I messaged him because I was on my YouTube channel. I was doing these Wavepunk shoutcasts, but I was also doing like replay breakdowns. And I asked him, saying, hey, my name's Wavepunk. This is my YouTube channel. I would love to have access to the replay files from the Gfinity games so I can do like in-depth analysis of what happened there. If that's something you guys are interested in, let me know. Anyways, thanks for your time. And his response was, oh, I know who you are. Let's talk soon. And that blew my mind. And I was like, oh, no way. Oh, this is super exciting. So the end of that conversation was, hey, I've seen your commentary. You're pretty good. Would you like to come cast Gfinity sometimes? And I was flabbergasted and walled because that was the real like opportunity. That was as high as it got in Rocket League at the time. And so I was like, this is exciting. Yes, I want to do that. And I remember going live. I had a leather jacket, like a $60 leather jacket from like Kohl's. That was like my like suit that I was wearing. I had a Razer Kraken headset, which sounded horrible, and a C920. And that was my first real broadcast, quote unquote. And I still have on my desktop here a screenshot that says first real cast. And it's just me and it's like in a 2-box, like a red border and everything. And I'm casting with this guy named The Pash, who was one of the primary Rocket League casters at the time. He's a German guy, wonderful individual, still commentates Rocket League on German broadcasts. And we got into that tournament. It was going good. I felt hype. It was the first time I had ever commentated with somebody, actually. It was the first time casting with a casting partner. Everything I'd done up until that point had been solo, because I was doing it on my own channel. And 3/4 of the way through the tournament, we're in like the semifinals of this bracket. The Pash's internet goes out, and the Pash is broadcasting. I'm in a call that he's pulling in. So the broadcast goes down and he's gone, but the gameplay is still happening, and I'm in Texas. So I'm sitting there watching the game. I know what's happening. And so I start typecasting in chat. I started being like, here, just telling people updates on what's happening in the game, because there's still a bunch of people in chat going, what's happening. And we then I do that until that game ends, and then we hold it while we try to figure out what's going on. Pash's internet is just flat out gone. He's not coming back. We don't know what to do about it. And so Cloud Fuel manages to get the stream up and running on his channel. And he's like, I'm going to pull you into this call. I'm going to broadcast the games. If you want to commentate, you can. If you don't, no worries. We're just going to like kind of air the games. I was like, no, I got this. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've solo casted everything up until this point. Like this is I'm actually probably more comfortable doing this than I am casting with somebody else. So I commentate the end of the tournament by myself. And it was this wonderful, like perfect storm of events that happened at the Pash's expense, where it's like if I do a good job, everyone's like, wow, look how good he did under pressure. And if I do a bad job, everyone's like, ah, look, it was his first time and everything went to crap. Like, of course, it's fine. Like it was a perfect storm. I couldn't do no wrong. So I earned a lot of respect and fans through this kind of lucky situation. And then proceeded to cast more of those Gfinities and more events with the Rockey League Central. And then Psyonix got involved and was like, hey, we see that there is this huge interest in these events. The RLC had run a pro league online between Europe and North America, and the grand finals had gotten 10,000 viewers. This was like the first 7 months of the game. No, this is entirely a community driven effort, 10,000 people tuning in. Psyonix saw that and said, hey, that's notable. We see that. Let's see if we can support that. And so they teamed up with Twitch Esports, the Twitch division that was specifically about making esports, and was one of the Twitch Esports first products. They produced the RLCS, and to summarize this part of the story, they hired Cloud Fuel as the primary head of Rockey League Central and the father of competitive Rockey League esports, to be the tournament organizer for Twitch Esports. And they asked him for a short list of casters of who he would recommend to be brought on, and I was on that list. So that was how I got into RLCS, and that was getting flown to LA and getting paid to be on a broadcast. That was my parents being like, "Are you sure these people aren't scamming you?" And me being like, "I genuinely don't care. Like, there's a plane ticket here, so I'm going to LA. At very worst, I'm flying myself back to Texas, and that's what's happening. Like I'm trying to I can't think of a worse situation than that." So that was a very surreal experience, especially as someone who had grown up in the watching or had spent like his early esports years were all around Call of Duty. Call of Duty was the first scene I followed because it was when I finally had access to watch esports. Halo was dead. Call of Duty was the shooter. Cool, I'm watching Call of Duty. And Golden Boy was one of the commentators in those early days. And Golden Boy also had been hired by Twitch Esports to help manage talent and was the first host of the RLCS. So there was the day Cloudfield had been like, you should be watching your messages, somebody's coming for you. And then Golden Boy messaged me on Twitter just out of the blue and was like, hey, here's my phone number, call me. And I was like, that just changed my life. And I call and the phone's ringing and I'm like, he could be about to say, you're a bad caster, please leave esports, never come back again, and it still would make my week. Like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. And instead he offered me a job in Los Angeles. So that's easily still one of the most surreal moments of my life. And when the short answer to how did I get into esports is right place and right time. Really, I'm pretty certain if I were to have commentated, like started to do that Rocket League shoutcasting on my channel like a month later, I probably don't get the opportunities I got, and I wouldn't have been there right at the very beginning. And it was actually crazy. My first commentary was in like January 28th or something of 2016, and the first day of RLCS was May 1st, 2016. So it was like the shortest path you possibly could have had from like, I want to try casting to I'm a professional caster now. I quit my job in August, I think. So I the first commentary was May, June, July was like the first season, and then the season 2 started end of August, and I quit in the off season there because they were paying me twice as much to commentate Rocket League than they were to stage manage. So I was like, cool, let's go. And yeah, that's a long story long.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. Well said though. Well told.
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, well told. I think you covered most of the things I was gonna, have you elaborate on, but the primary one I was gonna have you elaborate on was what year. So I'm glad you ended with that. Because I was trying to kind of guess and I couldn't really, and then you were like, oh, we had Skype, and I was like, wait a minute, like, hold on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a long time ago, I suppose. Now it was 5 years ago. That 5 years is a long time. But you're probably one of the newest babies of esports commentators that I've got to talk to.
Yeah.
Someone who got in with Rocket League, who is very recent compared to all the things that you just mentioned. I mean, Call of Duty, while the individual Call of Duty might be new, is a very long running series. Halo, Dota, StarCraft, everything's been around since even before 2010 with all of their predecessors before that, right? So yeah, Rocket League being incredibly new and incredibly unique as well.
Yeah.
Is part of the reason, maybe more all the reason, but part of the reason that it's become so popular so quickly. And that's that's great for you. I mean, just like
Yeah,
you said it, right place, right time.
it is like, not to make the podcast about Rocket League, but it's a brilliantly accessible game, very easy for anyone to watch. Like I do Twitch Rivals, right? My parents will tune in to watch Twitch Rivals. They never know what's going on, but with Rocket League, they do. Like they can at least understand what's happening on the field, especially because I think the camera philosophy in Rocket League is so much easier to grasp, where it's third person, so you're seeing the entirety of the object that is moving. It's not this first person, like I just see a gun floating thing that, and if you haven't played a video game, it's not that intuitive. And also because it's an open box, you can see basically the entire pitch at the same time. There's no fog of war, there's no limited information. It's very easy for anyone at any point to see everything that's happening. And sports fans are used to, I'm watching at the 50-yard line, right? You're never watching from the perspective of the quarterback. So it's a little bit more accessible in that way. But it's interesting that you brought up like it being new and it being different. I think is actually really big on that whole, oh, I was right place, right time, because Rocket League is so unique and is genuinely unique. People keep trying to put it into categories like, oh, it's a racing game, or oh, it's a sports game, and it's unlike any racing game. It is not a racing game. It's probably the closest is like Mario Kart or something as far as like speed and mechanics. But it is not a racing sim, and it's not a sports game at all. It's not a sports simulation game because it's not simulating a sport. It's a physics engine. It's the only purely physics based esport. The closest thing maybe is Super Smash Brothers. The most esports are click and do things and hit scan or like there is math, there is physics, but it's not literally, there is no shoot button in Rocket League. There's no catch button in Rocket League. There's just buttons to move your car, and the way your car interacts with the ball is entirely up to you. It's more akin to skateboarding, I feel like, than it is to actual esports. And that complete change created this bubble, created this vacuum of space. Because in shooters, if I'm a person who's been trying to commentate Counter-Strike for a while and I'm really struggling to find gigs and Valorant pops up, I'm going to hop on that so fast because everything I know about casting Counter-Strike is going to in some way give me a leg up on casting Valorant, and I'm going to have to just adjust to that new game and commentate there. And so you always have this trend of, as new games pop up, kind of the B tier or A tier casters who feel like this is more their specialty. Casters from one game will move to the new game to cast it. And with Rocket League, we had none of that because nothing translated. There was no, oh, I know how to commentate Counter-Strike, I'm going to go, wait, no, I am as green as everyone else here when it comes to Rocket League. And so it created this bubble that allowed for entirely new talent. We had the host of RLCS from like the end of season 1 after Golden Boy moved on to do other things through season 7, I think, was Axel Toss, who was from StarCraft. But other than that was the host role. Other than that, none of the commentators, not a single commentator in Rocket League, and very, very few pros in Rocket League have previous gaming experience or previous professional gaming experience. So it's so interesting that like it being unique created an entirely new group of people in the esports space. The funny thing is, it also trapped them in that space. So the moment any Rocket League commentator's like, I want to go cast something else, they realize my Rocket League skills, while it did genuinely prepare me to be a good commentator, it's not there's no other game that Rocket League translates into. I am having to go back to square one if I want to do something like StarCraft.
Right. Yeah. And that's a very unique point you're bringing up as well, which can also be applied to StarCraft. So we didn't have that new thing pop up because most of the time it was people playing Brood War in Brood War coming in.
Yeah.
You could argue, I suppose we kind of did because we were just kind of the emerging esport back in 2010. So you had people in Brood War, but then you had a bunch of people just doing the shoutcasting on YouTube who got famous and they did no previous experience. So kind of that happened, but there was Brood War to be involved and Warcraft 3 as well. But Rocket League completely new. Very, very good point that it created this new field that anyone could jump into. But as far as the closing space, that's where I think that RTS and whatever you would call Rocket League, because like what genre is that? Kind of share, because you don't really have, both of our games have some strategy to it. There's plays to be made, there's analysis to be made. But as far as taking that and applying it to another game, not really. We're
Yeah,
not going to use
yeah.
any similar terms, even really. So it's really about learning something new. But for Rocket League, this is the good thing for you guys is that it seems to be just getting more and more popular. It feels kind of like an esport that is more popular than people remember is the best way I can put it. We were like Rocket League. Oh, that's a great game. Love that game. Love that esport. Wow, it's so fun to watch. And then it just kind of like slides out of the memory because usually when
Hmm.
people talk about these big esports, are talking about Dota and CS and Valorant, specifically games that are backed by big publishers as
Yeah.
well, right? But Rocket League is just like silently, air quotes, silently there, just like getting more and more viewership and more gigs and more prestige in their esport. um, so you guys have this really bright, hopeful future. And I recently played Rocket League, by the way. Like I had
Nice.
not gotten into it at all, but I was like, it looks so fun to cast. I would love to just do it for fun. Then I started playing it, and it is a ton of fun. Um, and I saw that your guys' setup for esports is so imbued with the game. Like
Mm,
Psyonix has actually been like, we should put stuff in the game to help our esport, which is like pulling teeth on
yeah.
other game publishers out there.
It was pulling teeth for a while, to be fair.
Okay.
It was because I'm pretty certain this is speculation, and I don't actually know that this is true, but I'm pretty certain that at the top level of Psyonix, there is somebody with a lot of pull who loves Rocket League. There's no one in Psyonix that doesn't love Rocket League, and there's somebody who loves Rocket League, and for them specifically, it's a game about Hot Wheels playing a silly soccer-like mode. And for them, that's it. And the idea of it being this like esport with like pomp and circumstance and like seriousness to it is like it goes against everything they know the game to be. And so it was funny because like we would hear from one people like, oh, we just want this game to be big, and then we'd be like, well, here's the obvious next choice, and they'd be like, no, and it'd be like, but why? Why are we not putting skins like org skins in the game? Why are we not like putting it was like season, I think it was season 3, which is honestly a pretty fast turnaround of where they put the button in the game that says like esports live, click here now to go watch, and we went from like 20,000 viewers to 50,000 viewers overnight, just from advertising it in the game. But it was, I think at the beginning, I think there was a little bit of convincing it took on the Psyonix end that no, people want to compete in this game. And I understand that you don't necessarily feel like this game is a competition, but there's a huge part of our player base that does feel that way. Like originally the game was going to launch without ranked. That was actually a thing. Like that wasn't what they didn't realize that was important until they put out the alphas and the betas, and the players came back like, we need a way to compete in this. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll put a rank ladder in. And that is obviously the most popular way to play Rocket League now. So yeah, it is at a very good place now though. Like this, it has never been a better time to be in Rocket League esports. This is a wonderful golden age. Like honestly, quarantine, as many problems as it created, one of the upsides of that has been just an absolute firework of Rocket League content has come out. And there's the Rocket League, twitch.tv/Rocket League is live with content almost every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I think a lot of esports have benefited in the viewership way, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. There was like
Mhm.
actually a visible spike in people watching Twitch and esports specifically. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's really great for Rocket League. But it's so like I'm still so envious of you guys because yeah, a 3-season turnaround is just it's amazing.
it
Especially these
is.
aren't like year seasons; they're shorter than that. So
They are, yeah. Which we've moved to year seasons now, which I'm actually really excited
okay,
about. As someone who came from had a sports background from the South and stuff like that, 2 champions a year feels like it cheapens the value of being called a world champion. So I'm actually
Mhm.
really excited to have one a year from now on.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So that's I mean that's awesome. But like, you bring up like the in sports tab, and that's a in-game esports tab. There we go. And that is something that was always like it was going to be huge. Like the Rocket League guys, I see where they're coming from. I feel like I might have heard the same thing from someone else or maybe even a different game, but they were like, "Oh, it's a game, like don't worry about competitive." And it's like, "Oh, stop that." But they listen, they turn it around really quickly. They just kind of went like, "Oh, I guess you guys do want to be competitive." They eventually added in the tab, but they could as well because I guess their game was new enough that they actually had the program. I want to say physical way, but it's all electronic. But
Yeah.
the physical way of adding it in. StarCraft is like the opposite of all of that. Like we came in and Blizzard was like, we're gonna make an esport. That was actually one of their original goals of StarCraft 2.
Hmm.
And then they had no idea what an esport would actually be, that would become, right? Because it came in 2010. It was the esport for so long. They had no one to copy from. They had no one to learn from. But then they made this game in like 2010, which actually meant that it was being developed in like 2007 or something like that. So by the time that people were like, put an in-game tab to watch, and we had fought for this for years, and like every time we go to a summit, they'd be like, yeah, we're trying to make it work. We're working on it. We're working on it. They literally couldn't do it, is I think what it ended up being. They just literally couldn't. And that's always so frustrating because it was such an old game. There's so many things that they actually couldn't implement very, very well. And you know, right now it's like, I think the way I always put it is that the Blizzard games that come from that time period, so StarCraft 2 and like maybe I guess like a Warcraft or something, but StarCraft 2 is like a Jenga tower, and anytime you do something to it, like something else gets displaced, and you're like, so like a new skin gets added, and then like the game breaks, and you're like,
yeah. It's like League of Legends and everything being a minion, and like back in the day when it was all spaghetti code.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure League of Legends also had its problem, but League of Legends had its I guess it's a worthwhile investment to entirely rehaul everything, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they you know they knew that was going to be worth it, and it's been worth it. So I just wanted to draw those parallels because it really is like StarCraft 2 is this old esport. We're kind of like the grandfather, and Rocket League just seems nothing but the new way forward. It seems like the new generation is going to lead the charge because the company, you know, is listening to at least you know, a good degree, if not a great degree. You have a lot of interest in it. It is very casual friendly, not just to people who generally want to watch esports, but to people who don't watch esports. It's a real crowd pleaser. Like the first time I got interested in Rocket League is because the StarCraft stage is right next to you guys. And everyone, you know, and this is true, it's a stereotype, but it's also true. Like StarCraft 2 is golf clapping. Or very like, you know, like, oh, it was very good, very good.
Oh, yeah.
So we had that. And then the stage next to us is Rocket League at Montreal, like next to us. So we heard all of the, like, you know, the screaming that would happen every like 10 seconds because something cool was happening every 10 seconds. The idea you just watch a ball almost get into a net or not actually just makes it so simplistic, to the point actually that people at Blizzard would ask us questions like, how do you simplify StarCraft to a point? You know, can we put it down into numbers so that people can follow the numbers? Because we don't have a ball that people can watch. And our response is basically, you can't. You know, that's not the way that we're going to get new people. But Rocket League can. And so you guys just have this super bright future. And it seems almost inevitable that people are going to try and copy Rocket League somehow, some way. I have no idea.
I'm surprised at this point that there's not a clone. Like the fact that we've been 5 years as this like golden egg of a game, and there have been games like there was a game called like Breakaway. There's been these roller champions that Ubisoft's putting out, like games that are like 3v3 people moving around playing with a ball. Destruction All Stars is coming out soon. It's kind of people like put in the same categories as like teams of cars going against each other. But the thing that every one of those games misses, that makes like the moment we play it, like the Rocket League community will be like, oh, I'm excited, and we'll play it and be like, this isn't Rocket League, is because it's not physics based, because there is always a catch button, there's a shoot button, like it's not this it purely a digital box interacting with a digital ball with digital gravity. Like there's something so pure about that. The Rocket League has not had a physics update or a patch like in 5 years. There was like one at one point, a small one. And other than that, the game's meta evolves as people are like, hey, I figured out how to fall off the ceiling and do a crazy shot. And it makes the game good and hard to cast, to get things back to casting, right? Because there isn't patch updates that I can like go back and look at and be like, oh, here's what the players are doing. Like you have to just pay attention to the scene. You just have to watch. There is no like, here's the new bit of information to work through. But it does make it to where like the game that I casted 3 years ago is the same game I'm casting now, just played completely differently because the players have innovated.
Yeah, that still makes sense, right? Because like even to give a StarCraft 2 parallel, no one changed the way that you microed mutas, but Jaedong found out how to micro mutas.
Yeah. It's like mechanics are like discovered because people just iterate within the engine.
Yeah, but then for us, there is also patches. So you get a guy who comes back from casting 2 years ago, and they're like, "Why do locusts fly? Why do why do these things happen?"
Yeah.
So it's different. It creates, you know, definitely some things that you can pay attention to and have that history that people really enjoy learning about. I certainly enjoy learning about. But for you guys, it's still mostly the same. A Rocket League fan can get back into the game. 2 years later and still know what to expect.
Yeah, it does. I do think it does make it easier for the viewers to leave for a while. While it's not, like it's always difficult for a commentator to leave and then come back. Like your knowledge is going to be outdated. But for a viewer in Rocket League, I think it's much easier for them to leave and come back than it is for any character-based game or units-based game that just has a constant rotating roster of options.
Yeah, yeah. So as a commentator, then do you struggle like a lot of other esports do with kind of pandering to a casual viewer versus a hardcore viewer,
Hmm.
or do you guys have such a good mix that you kind of just do whatever?
It's fun. Yeah, there is like within esports, the way I've always phrased it in esports is that esports starts with a question, right? It starts with how do you play this game the best and who's the best at doing that? That's like you have a game pops up and the people start playing it and they go, I want to know what this looks like at the best. And then the esports sub community of that game pops up. And then they put on tournaments and they figure out rules and they figure out like how do we figure out who the best player is here. And as that gains in popularity because it's incredible to watch, it's spectacular to watch, right? You start to attract fans. And the thing is that the esports people care about truth. The fans care about what's interesting. They care about what's amazing, right? And so you inevitably have this dichotomy because once you become a scene where you have fans and community and it's really blossoming, the game developer then goes, oh, I want to like let's monetize this. This is money waiting to happen. And now you have all these different polls, right? So every esport has that push and pull between the esports purist, I want triple elimination into a triple round robin into a triple elimination bracket because it reduces redundancy and makes sure that the best team wins. And then we got the other side that's like, no, best of one, single elimination. I just want a good story, right? And like how do you find the balance there? I think with Rocket League, it's a little bit easier because the casual fan and the hardcore fan are amazed by the same things. It's the game is just about who can pull off the crazier thing. And with Rocket League, there is a bit of we've learned at the casting level. This was a thing that I think everyone comes into Rocket League casting. They're like, I'm excited to know what the best way to play this game is. I'm excited to really get down and like understand the strategies. Like when I watch as a fan, I don't quite understand the strategies the players are employing. And I'm excited that once I get to the casting level and really can dedicate my life to just like breaking down and looking at replays, I'll understand like the every micro movement these players are making. And then as you do that and you spend hours poring over one replay, going back and watching from every player's perspective and understanding every decision that was made on the pitch, you start to realize this is just improvisation. Like there is so like Rocket League is like 5 to 10% macro strategy and 90% mechanics, which actually that is one of the things that helps bridge the gap between that casual fan base that just wants to see the spectacular and the hardcore fan base who realizes the spectacular kind of is the best. And it's not about like, oh, I want to like like in something like a StarCraft or like a card game or something like that, like cheese strats are the things that the fans like, and the hardcore people are like, nah, play the meta. I want to see the best be the best. Don't try to win with cheese. And in Rocket League, there is no cheese. The cheese is the spice of the game that makes us excited as the casters. So it's not that difficult to bridge those two gaps. And usually there is a little bit of a dichotomy with the casting duos though, because it's really difficult. We started at first with play-by-play caster and color commentary. We had one and the other. And it was the play-by-play caster would say what was happening on the field. If there was a lull in the field, the color commentator would start to kind of be like, here's kind of what I've noticed. But if something started to pick back up in action, they would stop and the play-by-play caster would interrupt and come over the top of them to say what was happening on the field. And the problem is that Rocket League, at any moment in time, anything can happen. Any goal can go in from anywhere. Just all it takes is a crazy pinch off the wall, and the ball that's in the enemy corner is now in the other side's net. And so it really was not practical to maintain a standard play-by-play color commentary duality there. There is still that role. Like I am a play-by-play commentator and I am paired with a color commentator, but I do much more color and he does much more play-by-play than most other esports. And the real breakdown is I'm the hype storyteller and he's the character development. I'm telling you what the big plot points that are happening in the story, and he is filling in the conversations of like, here's what these characters are saying to each other. And so I satisfy the casual viewer with going, what the goal was nuts, and he comes in with like, actually, and it was crazy because look at the specifically the way he used this half flip to get in position there, right? And so you get a little bit of both. But the funny thing is that we like, if he's breaking something down and then something crazy starts to happen, he will just transition into saying what's happening on the field, and then I will fill in the other side of things. We have what we specialize in, but we both can do each other's roles, and it's critical that we do that in Rockey League because the game is a blink and you miss the most important thing that happened in the entire tournament sort of game. There's not like the whole thing in a MOBA or in an RTS where the armies are here, they're not next to each other, so they're not going to fight, you know, like it's not that in Rockey League the armies can teleport and be right next to each other at any moment. You never know what's going to happen. There's no like real cues for it. So yeah, the roles are a little bit less defined there, but that lack of but there is within it like the one of us is a little bit more esports focused and one of us is a little bit more show focused.
Well, that's beautiful. That's the third option I feel like I haven't really gotten to talk about yet. So in StarCraft, we kind of do both just because all of us are so experienced. We've all been there for such a long time. We both want to do both, as well as just like there's so much time between those fights that the play-by-play guy also has to chip in with strategy and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we're very comfortable doing both. But then you go look at some of these other big esports like Overwatch or Valorant, something that's very action-packed. And they, I mean, I guess they could have done what you guys are doing, but instead it seems like it's very much so that they pushed that it has to be extremes. It has to be, you have to be color and you have to be play-by-play. And you guys have to work with each other solely to make sure that you guys can bounce off each other perfectly in rhythm because this game is fast. So you really do have, play-by-play, for instance, we'll talk most of the time, right? As opposed to StarCraft, where you could argue that analysis is usually what's being talked about.
Yeah.
So, but you come in with that third option, which is that you guys both do both, but with probably more of a focus on the play-by-play than anything else. So you're over the third option. I don't know if there's going to be a fourth one that I find out in the future, but that sounds like it could be fun. But then it can also be where you could trip up a lot.
Yeah, we originally did start with hard to find roles, and I think every esport, maybe because we're following sports and we just can't help but look at sports and be like, we need to copy that. That's the successful model, and sports is very much play by play in color. And like I watch NASCAR is probably the sport I'm watching the most right now, and it's surprising they do that. They have one play-by-play commentator and then two former NASCAR champions who are the color commentators. And if a wreck happens, the play-by-play guy will just straight up walk right over the top of the color commentator and just say what's happening. And it's interesting because like I guess NASCAR is a little bit more like Rockey League, where like anything can happen at any time. But like with every other sport, right? Football, baseball, there's a pace, there's a flow, there's all right, where we do the play's over. Now we're gonna do commentary, or do color commentary, and then the play's we can see the guy the center leans down to touch the ball. All right, that's the indicator that the play's about to begin, and the color commentator knows to wrap it up, and then the play-by-play just calls what happens. And esports is so much less play based, and something like Counter-Strike, or Valorant, like the tactical shooters can do that pacing. But even something that has as much of a flow and a rhythm to it as StarCraft is that it never actually ends. Technically, he could send the army at any point, and you gotta be watching, or the MOBAs where it's like it's 5 independent people watching, and then you realize, oh, they're all starting to converge in the river. We're probably gonna have a team fight. With Rockey League, I think we wanted that defined role at the beginning because it was what we saw in the sports we looked up to, and there were the casters who were like, no, we do hybrid's better, and I think I was on the side of like, no, I want to be a play-by-play commentator because I'm good at that. And I think there was also originally some fear as someone who was not a high-level player in the game, that I was like the imposter syndrome of like, people are going to find out I actually don't know what I'm talking about here, and I'm just good at talking fast. And I didn't there was a fear of not being confident in my own game knowledge, so I wanted to rely on just being play-by-play and let the guy who was a champ level player who was paired with me be the analyst. As the game has gone on, and as I've gotten better, and as we've just kind of like realized more truly how this game works, it just doesn't work. The defined role is more clunky than it feels, and we still do, like, I am still primarily the play-by-play, and I do the majority of the talking because that is the skill set I am best at, and achieves, my co-commentator, We do pair off, sort of. It's not hard and rigid. I have casted with other people within this season, depending on what happened, depending on like who's there, if Chiefs is off for the week, or if it just, sometimes it's like if Gibbs is off that week, sometimes they put a Chiefs on the desk as the replacement for Gibbs, and then I cast with somebody else. And the casting team is very fluid in that way, but we do have pairings that we would work with the most often. Whenever they did that, I would work with Turtle almost exclusively. So I had it was like a secondary pairing. But it's anybody can count. Yeah, it is like everyone learning, having a role to specialize in, and then having kind of your off role of whether you're a color or play-by-play or a play-by-play color works well. It does actually sound good. And the funny thing is like sometimes it's even like with Achieves, he'll say the first line of play-by-play sometimes and then drop off, and I will come back in if he anticipates it being a long thing. But if like the goal happens, he's not going to be like, stop talking and let Caleb come in and scream over the top of me. He'll just celebrate the goal, and then I'll actually do the replay breakdown. And then we'll kind of reset from there.
Yeah, I mean, whatever makes sense. Important to really have that flow continue. Very, very pleasurable for the ears to listen to a flow as opposed to just a hard take in play-by-play or analysis.
It's like Rocket League. We always describe Rocket League as the improviser's playground. It is a game about improvisation. The funny thing is the casting needs to mimic that. If we're kind of like oh, let's follow this rigid structure. It's like the game doesn't follow a rigid structure. The casting can't either.
Yeah, well, that's a nice way to look at it. It reflects the game. That's cool. So in Rocket League, then it sounds like you guys have your commentator duos for the day, and then you have your analyst desk, right?
Yeah, there's a host. There's a like one dedicated analyst spot that Gibbs always fills, and he is always on the desk. He never commentates, except for on like I've had him on Twitch Rivals and stuff like that. He's a good commentator, but he's just that has kind of become his role in the community. So, and then there's a third there's a pre-show at the beginning of the day which has 4 people. So it's those 2 plus 2 other casters just picked on the day. And then in between every game, there's a desk segment with 1 other person. So there'll be 3 people on the desk, and that spot also rotates. So on a usual weekend, I will cast 3 matches and be on 1 desk. That's the norm for me. For the color commentators, it might be like they cast 2 and are on 2 desks or something like that.
I gotcha. Okay, that's kind of an interesting way to do it. Just one desk only analyst, and then trade out the other one. That's a little interesting.
I think that they usually try to have the person be on the desk who just commentated the previous match to give a little bit more of like insight there. Yeah. And then they help just set up the next match.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's, CSGO who has like literally the host with 2 analysts, and they're the same 2 analysts the entire time. Yep. They even rarely commentate. A lot of times they are really just analysts. Then you have StarCraft is going to be, we do all of the rules all the time. So like if we're just not casting, we're on the desk. That's just what it is. But I like that if the goal is to have the third person be who just casts, I think that's quite good. We had kind of, you'd say last year, so a live one actually. We had like this little drawing segment, like a real breakdown analysis thing with a telestrator. And at first they were like, person on break does that, and it's like, well, that's not really a break to make us do that. Yeah. Plus, like the person just like wasn't actively involved. So then I was like, let's just bring on a person who was casting, right? And that's how they're going to end their job. That series is going to be on a telestrator, and it worked out so much better. You were intimately involved. You knew exactly what you wanted to say. If you couldn't say it, if the the play-by-play guy was talking as he should, then you can get into it afterwards. I actually think that's like one of the best ways to do it. I think all of the ways can work though, obviously. Yeah. But I really like bringing on a person who's just commentating.
You do lose the one thing I've always wanted us to try, just like having a set desk and just sticking with that desk for the entire season and just see how it feels. And the thing that I feel like you gain with that you lose with a constant rotation is kind of the desk being its own story, its own piece of drama. When you have, like, for instance, this past weekend on the pre-show, one of the commentators made a big, bold prediction of like this kind of upstart Cinderella team, Dark Horse team is actually going to beat and make a big run in the tournament. And then they did, but he wasn't actually on a desk segment for the rest of the show because he was casting a semifinal. And then, so he was on the pre-show and then he was casting the semifinal. So that team did make the run, but he didn't get to like like build up that story and kind of like be that hype man, and like we didn't get that resolution. He set up this beginning of the story and then there was no conclusion to it, and you don't get this like ongoing inside jokes and like the meta, the story of the desk within itself when it's a constant rotation of casters. So there's like some things gained, some things lost. I think we all enjoy being on the desk. That's part of it too. So it's like there's a little bit of the just everyone wants to do it, and if we just lock the desk set, then it's like, okay, I'm just showing up and I'm commentating, and I never get to be on the desk, and I never get to flex those fun
Yeah.
podcast muscles, because it does kind of start to feel like a talk show, which is very different than commentary and also very fun.
Yeah, definitely depends on what type of desk feel you're going for, but I guess that's what Rockey League's going for, and I do think that's so fun. I think StarCraft also kind of goes through the same thing. But you bring up an excellent point. I agree. Like when we transfer from being on cast on the desk, there's like kind of like a shift in the way that you're communicating between the two. So if I was going to say something on the desk and then end up commentating, so I wrap up the last series on a desk and then I'm commenting the next one. I'm not really going to be able to bridge the narratives I had just brought up.
Yeah.
Even if I was like casting the same player. So that's a very good point to bring up. Yeah.
It's actually funny. Like an insight into just like a specific mechanic for me with that dynamic. I listen to music while I commentate. And I think, and most of the play-by-play casters in Rockey League now do. Rockey League is one of the few games where you don't really need audio, because I'm not like the only audio that really is helpful when playing Rockey League. It's helpful because you can tell where players are from your perspective, but because our camera's constantly shifting, I know generally where the players are on the pitch. I don't need the audio cues for that. The only other thing would be demolitions, and that shows up in the kill feed in the corner. So there's no information I'm gaining by audio. So we listen to and we share music all the time. Like, yo, here's what I'm listening to this week, or here's what I found. Like for me right now, it's been drum and bass. I'm just like real, like it gets me pumped, or like some like trappy dubstep is like, oh, I get it's so many times when like a goal goes in like on the drop and I get so hyped, and then I realize, oh, no one else heard that. That was just me heard that like music timing there. But it gets me really hyped, and I really enjoy it. The funny thing is, when I go to commentate the desk, I turn that off and I go to lo-fi beats to study to and like bring up some chill music, and that's my like desk podcasting music. I mean, it very much like characterizes that distinction you were talking about.
So that's awesome. That is completely different from anything I would have expected. I realized that makes a ton of sense only because I again recently played Rockey League, and I was like, wow, they even have their own in-game track. Make sure it's not NCA, guys. So that's awesome. That's super cool. I mean I've I asked like a couple times like, what's your hype song? Because I've gotten I got into the habit as I worked on my play-by-play, because I felt like it helped my play-by-play the most. I started listening to a hype song beforehand, but you're impossible to do it during a lot of these games.
Most games you can't listen to music during, and I'm not gonna lie, as someone whose background was music and was specifically wanting to get into game soundtracks, it's been like so nice. Like it's like, oh, I love being able to like just set my own soundtrack, and I do have like a specific playlist that is like my casting playlist. And I will cycle through things because as I kind of like get old, I need new stuff, but there's a few different songs that I rotate through there. There's it's Concussive by DJ Sona, from when the DJ Sona skin dropped in League of Legends. They hired 3 DJs to make 3 tracks, and the Concussive track is like such a groove. It's like and it's got this like great like kind of like intro that's like light, and then like the drop hits kind of like right after it, and so it really feels like I'm going into commentary. There's Hanging On, the Monsters remix from Ellie Goulding's cover of Active Child's song Hanging On. It's from the Divergent movie. If anyone's like, the first Divergent movie featured that track, that is a really good drop. And then Zardonic and Metric are the 2 drum and bass artists that I'll like cycle through. So I'll listen to it's really fun to sit there, and I'll like while they're on the desk about to throw to me, I'm like trying to time it so the drop happens like as they're coming to me, and I get so into it in that moment. It really helps.
The song that I chose to get hyped to is I was watching the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary, like the actual documentary, not the movie that was made after her. And their opening sequence was this awesome song. I loved it, man. It was called Bullpen by Dessa.
Oh, I think I know that song.
Yeah, it's an awesome song. It's it's all about like breaking barriers and whatnot. That's why it was the introduction to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But anyways, it can be so cool. It can put you in the right mindset. I mean, it also has an effect of like calming people down as well if you get nervous. Just something we haven't really brought on here. But the effect of music, I think, is is actually really powerful and something that like everyone should do. I used to draw. I was an artist.
Yeah.
Was taught to be an artist, but before I was officially an artist, which I'm not even really, but I went to school for artistry. I would draw because it would kind of calm me down. And music can do the same things as well. It can calm me down. It can raise you up. It can get you heart pumping. You can do the opposite. It can just put you in the right mindset. I think that's actually something that can really help a lot of people. I am not personally like I had a terrible first experience with music. Okay, so I'm going to blame that for why I've never called myself a music person. I thoroughly enjoy listening to it, but I was forced to choose between guitar, band, and vocal chorus. Didn't want to do those. I was just like scared of the guitar, I guess, and I was like, the flute sounds really cool. Biggest mistake. Band also sucks. They have the system where you are in order of how good you are, and if you were last chair, it meant you were terrible. And I was like, this is terrible for seventh graders.
Flutes are not easy instruments either.
No,
like
they weren't.
There's no back pressure. Like you're just sitting there just making yourself dizzy the whole time when you first start out.
No, I couldn't make the sound. I literally just like could not make the right like mouth movement for the first 6 months. So they were like, we're gonna fail you. And I was like, I literally am trying. Like
you told me I had to do this. Like
exactly. I hated it. But I love music. But I absolutely love music. And there are some similarities that I found talking to other guests who are more with a musical background than me. Who discuss these things, and they're like, the way that the pacing goes with an esport can actually reflect certain types of music, right? So we have people describing traditional commentary as more of a percussive, right? Like more like with the beats. It's very compared to, a StarCraft, which could be something or another. And I think it's this beautiful segment, like this beautiful sentiment, right? Where there's also this idea that your voice is not just what your voice is saying, because commentary is a lot about how you use your voice, not just what you use with your voice, what you're saying. Vocabulary is big, but the way that you want to kind of pierce into people's brains and be like, that was pleasant to listen to. And it's more than just, do you have a good voice or not as well, which is what most people will be like, oh, that guy has a radio voice. That helps. Undeniably, it helps. But, people who are really good at commentary, who people just enjoy listening to, they have that way of speaking. They have that nice like melody kind of way of speaking. Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever thought about that or brought that into your own work.
Oh, it's actually it's an interesting thing. This is a bit of a hot take. That I think there are actually a number of A to S tier commentators out there who make it by entirely on achieving the aesthetic of being a caster. Their voice sounds like a commentator. They literally, they could be just saying gibberish, and their commentary would be essentially as good as it currently is. They know how to like follow the object. They have the tone of voice is good, and the inflection and their use of like dynamics is excellent. The actual what they're saying, if you listen to what they're saying, you're like, that sentence wasn't English. That's not how you conjugate that verb. That's also not what was happening on the field. You don't know what was going on in this game or something, but because they are so good at sounding like a caster and achieving that aesthetic, that they continue to get the jobs. And this is actually something I've thought about a lot. I was listening to the podcast you did with Lemon Q, and you guys start off talking about like, what's it like being a female commentator? And you're talking about like the walls you guys have to go through. And one of the things I thought about forever ago was, it's not just that you sound different. It's that aesthetic. It's that aesthetic. The aesthetic is different for a female commentator's voice, and that makes people pay more attention to what you're saying. So where a male commentator could get away with completely misanalyzing the game, female commentators never do, because people tune in and go, wait, this is different. Wait, hold on. Okay, well, now I want to listen to what she's saying. This is, and then you're like, well, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. And so like, even one level more, like just to add another thing that like female commentators have to deal with in this space is that because it's a change from the aesthetic you've been listening to for 20 years of growing up watching sports, you're more critical, like, and it does suck. I do think aesthetics a huge tool that some casters rely on as a crutch, but other casters don't realize exists, and it's a constant, like, it's all things in moderation. You need to be working on all the things. You can't rely on just one thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that, right? Because there's like, of course you don't want to only be the aesthetics. You want to kind of be a well-rounded commentator, but then there's also people who just like come in with no aesthetic whatsoever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know, a
absolutely.
lot of like pros will come into casting and
Mhm.
they'll dish out these amazing factoids, and they'll have no pacing. They'll have
Oh,
no
and they're so
rise
boring
and
to listen
fall.
to. You know, it'll be like there's I'll just be like I've tuned out halfway through, and it's like he probably said something really smart, but it was just so boring the way he was saying it. So I
Yeah,
just stopped paying
yeah.
attention.
You know, the best pros who turn into commentators, usually they start off by being just so excited that they're
Yeah.
talking about the things that they like, that they can kind of, you know, that's how they start to get noticed as a commentator potentially. Then there's pros who come in and they have, you know, obviously no ambition. They kind of just like lay out the facts, and you're just like, well, you know,
Yeah.
that's great for once in a while. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many things to pay attention to when it comes to commentaries. That's why I made this podcast. But
Yeah.
you know, you also have this background in theater, and that you're already on stage, and you immediately brought up the idea of story, which is always one of the most important things, the
Mm.
most important thing. So when you were watching those guys all those years ago at this point, and you're like, oh, I could do better than them, was that based off of like, you know, I could tell a better story, I know what people want to hear from people on stage, or was that from a they don't know Rocket League stance?
It definitely wasn't that they don't know Rocket League. I think I kind of assumed they actually knew the game better than me, but I think that I think it was how do you make it interesting instead of just sitting here as someone who like it's the difference between a commentator and a group of football coaches sitting on the couch watching the
Mm,
football game together, that they're going to say very smart things. They know the game better than probably better, maybe better than the commentators do, but they don't understand like how to like it's this constant like it's a thing in music, it's a thing in art. There's static art, maybe not as much, but I haven't thought about it exactly, and you might even be able to point to how that where this exists. But like so much of the feeling of satisfaction and the feeling of completeness from anything we do is anticipation and resolution. It's setting up something and then giving someone something to look for, and then when they see it, they feel good about it. And it's the thing that football does, and that Counter-Strike and tactical shooters are very good at, because they're divided into chapters. The commentators have time to say, here's what you need to look for. This guy needs to pass the ball to that person. And I don't have to know anything about how football works. If I see that happen, I get excited. And I'm like, that's amazing. And tactical shooters can kind of do that same sort of thing of like, this player has the op. If he dies early, that changes this round dramatically and probably means that they lose the game. So here's your thing to watch. And I think early commentary in any sport, especially with green commentators, is I'm just, you know, we're basically just reacting to what we're seeing. And I'm not doing that like, here, let me tell, so we're going into the final minute. It comes down to this kickoff. Do they win this kickoff? Do they find the ball in the corner? Can they properly get the boost in their tank so that they can move up the field? Like the giving the viewers something to hold on to, and then celebrating or mourning the result, you know, of being like, oh, this is tragedy, or oh, this is success. That sort of thing. I think that was the original thing. Also being like, I'm good at talking and I have a better vocabulary than these people. I didn't know I had a strong vocabulary starting out, and I was and just being able to present myself, use my diaphragm to speak. I did choir all through high school and college, and knowing like I understand what it means to perform. I'm excited to perform. Where these guys are like, I'm a nerd who,
mhm.
but I know about this game. I'll talk about it. You know.
That's a big point, is that a lot of the times for esports, a lot of the people are people who were nerds,
Mhm.
aka passionate people
Yeah.
who talked about a game and then eventually learned how to be entertainers. Where in maybe traditional sports, there's a bit more of the opposite influx, where like, of course, you have people who are very passionate about the game. The pros do sometimes become those analysts,
Yeah.
but a lot of times the people interested in this field are kind of entertainers a little bit. They kind of go through like broadcasting school or journalism even, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they come out on the other side and they kind of already have a basis where, you know, there's no schooling for esports. It's an entirely new way of communicating and commentary, so there's not really even lessons. You can watch the mentors of esports, people who've been around for even 15 years, like a DJ Wheat,
Yeah.
right? But even he is still figuring things out and continuing to improve his craft in this world. So
And people like DJ Weed, I think, are like people who were that just naturally charismatic. And I say that as someone who did not know DJ Weed back in the day. Maybe he would come on this podcast and tell us, like, no, I was entirely a self, isolated nerd. But he strikes me as someone who has a natural charisma to him. And the thing with sports, right, is that the players do make very good commentators very easily, because In sports, you have been competing in front of an audience and emoting with yourself in front of physical people since you were 7 years old. Where with esports, we say play this game on your computer in your room until you finally get to the literal top level, until you're the 1% of the 1%, and then we're going to put you in front of a crowd and stick a microphone in front of your face and say, "Hey, don't be antisocial." So like the athletes, the jocks have practice building charisma where the nerds don't, and I think it's a more difficult transition to go from enthusiast to performer in esports than it is in sports.
That's the missing link right there. I've been trying to kind of explain this. I'm like, I know it's different, but what's different about it? But I think that's right. Even as like I did a ton of sports when I was younger. I really liked the competitive side of sports. I didn't care about watching them though, not until I got into esports. But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that, right? Like you were in front of a potentially large crowd. The better you got, the older you got, or you're in front of 20, family members. Like the point is though, you're out there, you're communicating, you're socializing. And then it gets even worse, right? When there's so many games that are also solo. You don't talk to a team for an entire season or entire year. You talk to maybe a group of people that change every time you do a best of.
Like especially StarCraft, right? Because like the fighting games have the wonderful thing that they didn't have any online infrastructure for a while, so the fighting game community began as an in-person thing. They actually got that, which is why we have so much more trash talk and like personality in the fighting game community than we do in other esports. But yeah, StarCraft in particular. StarCraft, I compare StarCraft to like the piano majors at music school who like one instrument by yourself 8 hours a day, like confined solitary confinement there. Like those poor people, they did struggle to talk.
That's so amazing. I can see it too, like compared to people who are in band who are with the wood section.
You're around people.
Yeah, exactly. That's beautiful. And it's definitely true. I mean, you go to a PC land PC land and you see StarCraft and it's like everyone must be quiet, everyone must be respectful, everyone just like stay behind someone to watch. And then exactly, then fighting games, it's everyone's like shit talking as they fight. So it's the different ways that we all get here. But to your point, the video game just kind of world kind of it doesn't promote that bravado and entertainment aspect, socialization aspect as much when it comes to face-to-face, which with COVID having been going on for a year, I'm sure many people are going to forget how to have face-to-face interactions by the time we get back. But anyways, it's our job to try and be those really entertaining people and feel like, you said it, DJ Wheat seems like he just was a naturally like social guy. I'm not sure. I think I saw a video of him in his dorm room back when he was using like Winamp, and I'm like, he kind of just looked like a nerd, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
But I get where you're going, right? Because like Tasteless and Day 9, for instance, when you meet them, they are kind of what they're like on screen. They're larger than life. When they speak, they capture the room. When they walk in, they capture the room. They're so damn tall. Yeah. So. Yeah, there are some people who do get in esports who just kind of probably had that natural talent in them. They could have done a lot of things on camera, a lot of things in the entertainment industry, and they just were also nerds coincidentally.
Yeah. This is the best esports nerds. They're the best esports athletes who become commentators aren't the ones who are good, are the ones who are charismatic. Yes, it's usually the substitute players, the people who have talked their ways on the rosters, generally make the best commentators.
Yeah, absolutely. So so back to story. So you know what to tell a story, you learn all that, you said you could do better, you eventually become a commentator for Rocket League. Now I've only heard commentator so far, so how did you get into hosting for Twitch Rivals?
Hosting was interesting. So Twitch Rivals was originally and still is currently, well, no, not anymore, but so RLCS was there was a studio, like a third-party studio that actually was hired to like have the physical space and run the cameras for Psyonix and for Twitch esports. And so Twitch has a very good relationship with that studio, and they now they produced Twitch Rivals back in the day, and they still do. And so Twitch Rivals was a product I was very connected to. I knew about it because I was working in and around that studio. Findable Carpet, Kevin Brown was one of the most beloved commentators of Rocket League. He was the original host of Twitch Rivals, and he was a very good friend of mine. We both moved out to LA around the same time and bonded around that experience. He was from Florida, I was from Texas. We had no idea what was going on. And ever since I had seen Twitch Rivals, I was on the very first Twitch Rivals broadcast. Actually, I was the observer in the I was hired as a contractor to observe the PUBG game and to like fly around by myself in this very broken observer client. And but I loved Twitch Rivals, and I was like, I want to be on Twitch Rivals. I want to commentate, because back in the day it was a 2-man commentary / hosting team that would I just wanted to rip on streamers and like talk about Twitch, because I thought Twitch was cool. I thought streamers were cool. I was excited to do that. And there was a show where they couldn't be there, so they needed some commentators, and my agent got the offer, and I told him I wanted to, and I had done some PUBG work before. But the game's Twitch Rivals is very much not about the game at the time. It's just about the commentators or about the streamers. So I moved into that kind of like hosting / casting role. And I did that for a few weeks, and then they moved to this big spanking brand new studio, and they were Kevin Brown at this time was moving away from being the host. He didn't want to be on camera talent anymore, just wanted to do other things with his life. And so they were looking for a backup host, or for a new host. And the first game, this funny story, the very first game, I was told, they're like, all right, we're gonna have you be on as a co-host, and it'll be for League of Legends. And I was like, okay, cool, I've played a lot of League of Legends, I'll just update myself on the new run of show, on the new patch and stuff like that, and hopefully not make an ass of myself. And the game that was on like Wednesday, the show was on the next Tuesday. They told me on Saturday, oh, actually the game changed, it's StarCraft. And I'm like, I've never played StarCraft, never played a lick of StarCraft. I know how the game works, I understand the basic concept, that's it. And so luckily, StarCraft is a game that is very well established and has a wealth of resources to help you learn. And so I stayed up overnight, just like I had like so many sheets of like, all right, here's all the units, here's what they go into, here's how this works. Like just going through, like I had like 3 sheets of like yellow notebook paper I brought with me. I had notes on all the streamers and stuff like that. And it was fascinating. And I went through that, and it was a good experience. I didn't. And Twitch was. They told me afterwards, they're like, we were impressed by how much you knew about the game. I was like, oh, good, because that was definitely my one biggest concern. And so then they invited me back for other things, and it just kind of became like, you're our guy, and we want you to host. That wasn't specifically, you asked about getting into host, and I realized I got ahead of myself. I actually did host 2 other things before that. The job I moved to Los Angeles for was that same studio said, hey, we're running the Overwatch Winter Premiere. It was one of the first Overwatch leagues before Overwatch League became a thing. And they're like, you will have you be the host if you live here. We can't fly you back and forth every week, but if you move to LA, we'll have you be the host. And so I hosted that. Was really into Overwatch when it first came out. This was the very beginning, and that was fun. That tournament actually taught me I don't like Overwatch, so that was a nice to get that answer. But it was great. Like it was birth by fire, learning how to host on the fly. And then Rocket League did a 35 episode midweek talk show, like Sports Center style talk show, for the first 2, like seasons 2 through 4 or so of RLCS. And I was the primary host because, again, I was local. And so between those 2 things, I got a lot of experience hosting. And then that translated well to Twitch Rivals, which has been just an incredible blessing, especially for just reps as a caster, like 3 shows a week, 10 hours a show, especially at the very beginning. You get decent at doing ad reads. So
yeah. Okay, so that's that was once again like one of those right place, right times, specifically place.
It was. There was the people always are like, oh, should I move to LA to do things? And like, I don't know if I would have ever moved to LA if there hadn't been someone being like, hey, if you come to LA, we'll give you this job. Right. That made that decision easy for me. But there is an advantage, and I've thought about, especially during quarantine, moving back to Texas. I love Texas. I do miss Texas. It's cheaper than here, and there's a lot of there's family there. But there is a distinct advantage to being local and to being available, to be in the place the work is being done, regardless of what industry you're in. If there's a place that is for your thing, if you're into music, going to Nashville is a good thing. If you're into theater, going to New York's a good thing. Being in LA is a good thing for esports.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. I've had other people talk to me about, which like, being in LA is obviously very good. I know some people work, and it's all pre-COVID stuff, but they worked outside of LA or even outside of California, but it was still like a shorter flight. It was a cheaper flight.
Yeah.
And that could work for them a little bit. Yeah. I don't know
Vegas seems to be like a decent alternative,
Yeah,
especially because like if you really want the gig bad enough, or if they're like, we genuinely can't pay you, but we'd love to have you on the show. We can't pay you to we can't fly you. You could drive, you know.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's like the only place I would really think about unless I was willing to forfeit that advantage of being local.
Yeah. So I guess I'll ask you this because it was kind of more of a place thing. But then, what do you advise to people who want to do this kind of variety hosting role to get
Ooh,
into and do?
like the thing about variety hosting, right? And I, it's funny. There's been moments where people have. I work with CSA, and they represent Golden Boy and Seltzer, who are two of the biggest variety hosts in all of esports. And there was a point at which they were kind of like, "Man, you're getting up to the same numbers as them. Like you've done as many games as they have." And while that's technically true, it's very different circumstance that Golden Boy has done 30 different games on 30 different shows, and 30 different game developers have chosen to hire him, where I've done 30 different games on one show under one client. And it's a very unique circumstance. I don't know how I actually like how do you get into variety hosting? Like honestly, I think the answer is really the same as it is of if you want to get into casting something. Start a show on your own Twitch channel where you play a different game every day, and like establish that like my thing is being a generalist and being able to pivot into other games. Um Specifically with hosting different games, the one thing we do on Twitch Rivals that makes my life easy is that we bring in experts. We bring in endemic experts. And I at first my goal was I need to know a lot about StarCraft so I don't make a fool of myself. And there is a degree of knowledge that is important to have so that you don't make a fool of yourself. I've heard hosts like for Rockey League talk about like they call the boost exhaust or something, right? And it's like little tiny details like that that make the community feel like you're out of touch and you don't know. You clearly don't play the game. No one ever calls it exhaust. It's called boost. And things like knowing like lingo like that, like and sometimes it's like for me on Twitch Rivals, I'll ask the talent like, hey, what are the pitfalls? If it's a brand new game, I'll be like, what are the things that I like? What are there like specific terminology, specific inside jokes I should be aware of? So if I'm interviewing a player and they say it, I know to laugh or I know to not laugh or whatever, like just help me not look stupid. But and now Rocket League or Twitch Rivals goes through a cycle of games, and now it's kind of like, okay, cool. I remember the last time we were in StarCraft. Hey, tell me what's different now, and kind of like building upon previous knowledge, but leaning on those experts and being willing to ask the question, hey, so for the people at home who don't know, which I am one of, answer this question, like explain this part of the game. And sometimes I'm just learning on the fly there. So being willing to use experts is a big part of being a generalist. But then, yeah, I think really do it yourself. Find a way to make that show. I don't like it. It is such a situational thing to host variety stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult because as soon as you become like a variety streamer is arguably one of the most difficult things to even become,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So you would kind of be like hoping to use that as almost like a not even your main job, but just proof that you can do it, which can be difficult. But
Mhm.
you've mentioned a couple of times that you're part of an agency. Do you suggest then going after an agency, and then do you suggest having a demo reel to show them and potential clients?
Demo reels were something that I thought at first was like, oh, you only need a demo reel when you don't have a lot of work and like you're trying to like you're sending your demo reel to people. But it actually turns out that it's very helpful to have a demo reel even if you are an established caster. That when your agent or you, but before you have an agent, is pitching you on a show, it's very helpful to be like, someone's like, I've never heard of Wavepunk. Like, well, here's a 1.5-minute video that shows you kind of who he is and has his personality written all over it. That is a good thing to have if you can make one, and it doesn't have to be long and doesn't like I would say actually make it as short as possible while showing off all of your best moments. Should you have an agent is very much a question you have to answer for yourself, and I think there is a degree to which there's a specific tier of work that being achieved warrants having an agent. It was not a situation where I pursued one. I had agents come to me and say, hey, we think we can help you. And I was encouraged by mentors in the space to work with an agency. So it wasn't the sort of thing like I went to the agency and said, hey, will you represent me? They came to me saying, hey, we want to represent you. And for me, it's specifically good because I am bad at asking for money. I am very good at saying, oh, I'll do it for super cheap. And they're like, no, we're going to get you twice as much money as you were going to ask for. And I'm like, oh, but what if we lose the gig? And they're like, here, we got the contract. I'm like, oh, my life is better because I had an agent, right? Agencies do take a percentage of the money you make. So if you are at a low enough level where you can do your own negotiations, or negotiations isn't something that's scary to you, don't do it. Like, do you make the money that is yours there. But if you're someone like me who did have people coming to him and saying, hey, we want you to be on our show, how much are you? And I was going to say a way too low number. It's good to have one for sure. And they're wonderful people. I've gotten a lot of work. I was on Twitch Rivals because I had an agent. So it can be very helpful if the situation's right for you.
I think that was very helpful to learn. I think a demo reel is becoming like more popular as there are so many more people looking to do more than one game. It's kind of a necessity as well to do more than one game. So we might be going closer to that future where we're kind of like, actors or anything like that, which is that you have to have a demo. We're maybe getting closer to that future than the one we were at.
The weird part is for 2020 and 2021, your setup now is an extension of yourself. So the quality of your camera, the quality of your internet, the quality of your microphone, like as a caster, that does actually play into the decision to hire you now. So it is something that we were talking earlier about, like people that don't understand aesthetic, like, oh, I have a good vocabulary, or oh, I have a good voice, and I don't need to think about the way I look on camera or the way I carry myself or the tone of my voice. Like that is all now like magnified by the fact that you are your own broadcast engineer. So getting your own gear up to a quality that you think represents you well, I think is something that's important for commentators right now while we're in isolation.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. That's definitely a good addition, because it's not you don't go there anymore and potentially not only have hair and makeup artists, but some esports even provide wardrobe. So you're not at that point anymore. So it is very important how you present yourself.
Yeah, I have so much more clothing right now than I know what to do with. I don't have space in my closet because it's like, here's all the stuff I'm gonna wear on shows. I'm buy like hoodies and stuff, and it's like, where do I put this? So,
all right, well, let's wrap up with the question from Patreon then. So this seems like it's going to be a funny one. All right, so if you were living in a Rocket League house and had to pick exactly 5 people from the Rocket League scene to live there with you, who would they be?
So assuming I'm one of the 5 people, excuse me, it's hard to pick. Like there's because there's a lot of wonderful people, but honestly, so this isn't actually as funny of an answer. Here's another hot take. I think that the Rocket League casting team is the best casting team in the world right now. And not just because they're good at casting their game. That's actually the most subjective part. That's the part that's the most difficult to measure, is whether we're better at casting Rocket League than you guys are at casting StarCraft, right? Who can say that? Nobody can say that. The thing that makes them incredible and that I realize is so rare is the degree to which that group of individuals trusts each other and has each other's backs and genuinely cares about each other. And I believe that. I know that that's true. The conversations we have in the green room are so open and honest and vulnerable, like in a way that I don't find that degree of vulnerability in most friend groups. Like they are such a good group of friends right now that it makes it to where I am so ready, so willing to throw myself on a sword for them on air or be the butt of a joke because it's good for the bit, because I know for a fact that they're not doing it to try and put me down or to try and take my spot. There's not that. There is a healthy competitiveness of we all want to be better commentators than each other. We want to get that grand finals, and it feels good when we get that grand finals. But there is genuinely, I've not heard a single person say anything in the last, like since we went remote, that was like, oh, I'm jealous that they're getting this work or something like that. And part of it is because Rocket League is a wonderful place to be right now. Everyone feels pretty secure in their jobs. That it allows us to have that freedom and that trust with each other. But they are a genuinely excellent group of friends that I feel so privileged to be a part of. And I would any iteration of the 5 of them is, I think, the safe answer to that question, because it's hard. It'd be hard to pick just 4 other people. So yeah, any of those guys, they're all very, very dear friends. The players are cool, but I don't get to talk to them as much because they're nerds. So.
Yeah, totally. Play a game all day. That's a very wholesome yet cheesy. I mean, it's cheesy, but it is wholesome.
It is super cheesy.
It's like one of those cop-out answers. I love everyone.
If I had to give like a hot answer, I don't know. I'd probably feel like the content creators then, like, you know, like Sunless Khan and Sizz and stuff like that. Just be a part of that drama. I would live in that house for a year and then move out because of old age. Like, oh, it'd be such drama to have that many loud, raucous people, but it would be a great time. I would love it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that then. I know there are some esports out there who don't have such a great group of people. But the good news is that I've now have Rockey League, great group of people. StarCraft's great group of people.
Yeah.
And then I want to say there was another esports that was very good, but I'm not going to say the ones that weren't good.
There was. I'm trying to think like through like it's one of the fun things about Twitch Rivals that I get to interact with so many casters of so many disciplines. Trying to think through like who like the speedrun community. I think had the most like the speedrun and the fighting games community had the most like kind-hearted, we care about each other. There was a rough edge to the fighting games community of like just like there's always a layer of trash talk happening with them, but they clearly really care about each other. That was a really beautiful thing. I love the shout out to both of those communities. The speedrun community is also just like so. Anytime the speedrun you pay attention to the speedrun community, they're like, "Oh, we appreciate you so much. We're so excited to show you our cool thing." They're the opposite of gatekeeping. They're the opposite of hipsterism of like, "No, you got to know how this game." They're like, "No, you like speedrunning, bro? Me too. Come on, let me show you this thing." Like they're such a wonderful community.
Yeah. I actually think they're really quite awesome. I haven't gotten a speedrunner who's talked nothing but speedrunning yet.
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
the hero was, but yeah, I'm gonna get a speedrunner on who's gonna talk solely about speedrunning once, and I'm really looking forward to that because you know every year you listen in on like awesome games on Quick and whatnot, and it just seems like every year they're like, this guy just came into the speedrun community 6 months ago and he found some new thing, and you're like, well, that's probably a pretty good community then.
Yeah, and any community that is competitive with each other, but also the moment you find a new strat shares it with all of their primary competitors.
Yeah,
there's something very wholesome about that community.
Yeah, it's the ones that are just like, the ones that I've not heard good things about are the communities that like hide stuff that are like, I want to be hired over you, so I'm going to hide this. No, that's when it gets really sketchy.
That is toxic, and there's a degree to which like Rockey League was that way at the beginning because we were all terrified of losing our jobs, and so we were like, I'm protective of the things I think help give me an edge up over you. So that like there's a degree to which I think people think like this is just a word for tournament organizers. They think like, oh, if commentators are worried about losing their job, they will continue to, that pressure will force them to be good. They won't get complacent. And while I understand that theory, in my experience, giving them the freedom and the confidence that their job is secure actually encourages them to improve because it's what's good for the show and because they are excited to they have the freedom to make mistakes, which means they have the freedom to be themselves more.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that there's some sketchy companies out there who would do it just to be like, you won't ask for as much money.
That's true as well.
That's a terrible one, but
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, exactly, a whole nother thing. But we're wrapping it up now. So it's been 92 minutes of some really fun conversation. I've learned a lot about Rockey League, which is really cool. As I said, it was one of those esports where I heard about it. You know, I was friends with Gillyweed when she was doing StarCraft like 10 years ago. Then she did Heroes, then she got into Rockey League, and I immediately was like, oh well, she likes Rockey League, then it must be pretty good.
Yeah.
And then when I was at Montreal 3 years ago, I was just like, shit, man, I want this crowd. It sounds so amazing. So I'm really glad I got to talk to someone who was there from the beginning too. I didn't realize that honestly when I first asked you to come on, but I always love learning about the history of these esports. So I just hope that Rockey League continues, kicking ass, doing awesome stuff. It feels like any day now, any month now, it's going to be up there as one of the premier esports.
Yeah, I sort of feel like it. I mean, we had more viewers than LEC this weekend, so
no, exactly.
It feels like we're kind of there. Like let's go. It's just kind of a normal spring split. So
no, exactly. I mean, it needs to like be present in people's minds, right? When they're like, what's the top esport? Like it's gonna come over. It's gonna move over. Push over one of these games one day is what it feels like. But
I hope it gets there. That'd be fun.
I hope so as well, because you guys sound really awesome. So thanks again for coming on. Now it's time to do any shout outs or where you're going to be. What's the schedule for Rockey League? All that good stuff.
The spring split is currently going on. We are in the third leg of the RLCS X, the 10th season of the RLCS, and we will have the North Americans playing here this next weekend. As far as when this goes live. I don't know what'll be happening, but yeah, definitely check out twitch.tv/Rockey League for that action. That channel is genuinely live with Rockey League content basically every day, so it's worth the follow if you want to know about what's going on with Rockey League esports. I'm Wavepunk, though. You can find me at WavepunkRL on Twitter and on Instagram. I do a lot of I've been getting back into, I do a lot of doodling, but I've been doing a lot of graffiti art on Instagram, and I post about my Mustang on there too. I enjoy the car community, so if you enjoy cars and graffiti and my face, Instagram at WavepunkRL. If you enjoy interesting opinions and retweets, they're on Twitter. And then Wavepunk on Twitch and on TikTok. I make a lot of music content on TikTok, and I do art and music on stream, as well as just talking about esports. So yeah, those are where you can find me. And thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
I'm glad you had fun, dude. So guys, hopefully you had fun out there as well, listening in on what it's like to be Wavepunk. And I hope you guys will come back for episode 31 with Frankie. So that'll be an exciting one. Right. See you guys then. Bye.